she felt nothing. She was such a shell of a person. He had taken everything from her. But she found a little bit of a something that she could hold on to. And it came out. It came out a little at a time. And it was the most gorgeous thing to watch part of her blossom again. Boy, he tried to bury her. This man tried his hardest to bury her, but you know what? God wasn't through with her.
How can you bury anyone anymore? Because the one that was buried got up.
That's exactly right. Boy,
and you help her see that. And thank you so much for being on the Able to Overcome podcast, episode number 6.
Yeah.
I have been really excited about this because of your ministry and because of how you've helped me and helped me see things, and really helped with what we do with Able to Overcome to not just be a one-time interaction with the people we help, but long-term care. And I'm really inspired by what you do in your ministry.
Thank you.
For those that don't know, Miss Jennifer is she leads a ministry called Standing in the Gap, which helps those who have been trafficked and abused, I guess the marginalized outcasts that the people look over. And that's what you do on the day-to-day. Some people call her Jennifer. I call her Batwoman. Maybe that's the Tesla that you drive that maybe do that. But Miss Jennifer, you will just introduce yourself and walk us through what led you into the ministry that you're doing.
Sure. I'm Jennifer Clark, and I started Standing in the Gap when the Lord just kept laying it on my heart about the need for love and care for women who had forgotten who they were. They had forgotten that they were loved. They had forgotten that they were the daughter of a king. They had forgotten that they were worthy and of value. And my heart just couldn't take it anymore because God just kept on and on and on. And sort of a funny story, I guess, to no one except for myself, but my grandmother just raised me to have a voice. I have wondrul parents. I'm an only child, but my grandmother had a huge...
I knew something was off.
Yeah. But my grandmother was just a force in my life and raised me to have a voice, intended for me to have a voice. And if I saw something that was not right, I saw something that was important to me, stand up, say something, do something about it, and speak up in a way that you're heard. She was not going to have a granddaughter that talked small and quiet. And so I just couldn't do it anymore. God just kept dropping women in my path all the time. And that's how it started. And so I just started a small prayer group with women that had always had an impact in my life. And we still meet to this day, once a month. And we pray for women that God drops in my life. And we pray specifics. We pray for them by name, and we pray for them by need. And that's what we do. And we have watched absolute miracles happen in my war room, is what I call it. My little spiritual war room is anointed.
Yeah, I love it. I don't think many people often think about the things that made them who they are. And so being able to name your grandmother as someone that helped shape you. And it also really inspires me hearing that the people that we're impacting today is going to shape not just their life, but the lives in which they impact. And
yes.
So it's cool to see that. And so as these women begin dropping into your lap, I mean, how are you? For me, I was not educated on what human trafficking was, or sex trafficking, whatever verbiage you want to use. But as you're uncovering what's going on, how was what was that like as you were getting pulled deeper and deeper and seeing the systematic, horrible things that were going on?
Well, first of all, I had no background in it at all. And
Yeah.
there was no part of my life that prepared me for this. I was raised in the most gentle, loving home. Uh, Never heard my parents argue. I was just, I was raised in church every single Sunday, every Wednesday. There was no part of my life that prepared me for this.
Yeah.
And so when God decided that this is where He wanted to place me in the world, I just was shocked.
Yeah.
But I knew it to be true. When you know, you know, you know, and I knew. And so I just learned as I went along. And it is true that if you say yes, God will equip you.
Yeah.
But 100% that is true. And so it's like, I think I've told you this before in multiple conversations that you and I have had. I just sit in a posture of obedience. And as He brings these women to me, I just say, okay.
Yeah.
And He equips me. And so I'm sort of past the shocking point at this time, but it has been a learning curve for sure.
I can imagine.
And the fact that we are in Coleman, Alabama, that no one thinks anything like that could go on in Coleman, Alabama, is shocking, but it does.
Yeah.
And the more you're in it, the more you're pulled into it, the more you find out, the more you know, and the more people say, no, it's not happening.
There's no way.
There's no way.
Could you define what I guess trafficking is? And yeah, because I think many people are going to watch this podcast that attend temple or where we go to church or are in Coleman, and even the term is very vague and
It
not
is
really
vague.
defined. So, could you explain what that is for us?
Sure. It is what I do in my trafficking world. Um, it is trading a woman for money or drugs. A lot of the time it's drugs. Or a child for drugs or money. Unfortunately, it's always horrific. The details are not something that people want to hear about. It's very difficult to talk about, especially with people in the church. A lot of times you will try to talk about it with people in the church, and it makes them very uncomfortable. But I don't have a problem talking about it because I'm in it every day.
Yeah.
But these women are sold for sex, and there's either money traded, or most of the time around here it's meth, it's marijuana, it's fentanyl, and so they're traffickers.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, their traffickers are trading them, selling them for drugs or just to make money.
Yeah. And the women that are being trafficked, I mean, and I know you talked about this, there are some women that are in this like voluntarily that are help leading other women.
Yes, they are. They're grooming other women. Shockingly enough, I've had several mothers who sell their daughters for their own drug habit, to support the drug habit that the moms have. As a mom, I find that particularly disturbing. And you find when you're raised like I was raised, like you were raised, that's just outside of rational thinking to us. But to some of these people, it's just a normal day and a normal occurrence. And to me, it's just the farthest thing from my imagination. But and you find out what generational curse is all about, you know.
And that's very interesting because a lot of these women are not, it's not like they just got out of Harvard and now they find themselves in this. A lot of things you're finding out is that we're talking about compounded family trauma that has led.
Yes. Yes. I'll give you an example. I had a call, it's been several years now, from a grandmother who doesn't live in this county. She lives in an adjacent county. And she called me out of the blue one day about her granddaughter, because her granddaughter was missing.
Mm-hmm.
And she somehow found my name, and which is a whole other story about how these people find me. I don't advertise, and but she found me, and she was wondering about her granddaughter. She hadn't talked to her in a long time. And she sort of had an idea about what was happening with her granddaughter. And I found her. I found the granddaughter. She was being held by a man over twice her age, and he was selling her out of one of our local motels here in Coleman. And through that grandmother, I came to find that all of it started with this young lady's mother. The mother had groomed her daughter, and the mother had been in prostitution, had a drug habit, started selling her daughter. The grandmother had a drug and alcohol problem. And so you learn that granddaughter, mother, grandmother, and after I found out all of that, there was another layer on top of that with an abuse problem.
Yeah.
I had always heard and thought that most generational problems ran through a male problem, the male side.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore. It's the generational thing runs strong through the women side of the family.
I think a lot of that due to the fact that men have been gone for 3 generations as well.
You are exactly right.
I mean, it used to be the thing because the males were present, and now we have men that cowardly run away after getting someone knocked up.
Yeah.
But it's, and as you're speaking that, I'm like, that's how important, the gospel is, and to penetrate like one heart, to unveil one set of eyes, because it can end that generational systematic abuse is being passed down, and can revive a generational line to add life. Like that grandmother, that mother, that daughter, death, but inserting one person to send, to share, and to, with these victims, to work months with.
Yes.
Why do we invest? Why do we cry? Why do we send our money? Because the value of what that generation is going to change after that is so important.
Well, that is the entire call on my life, though. It isn't about the sex trafficking. It is, but it's really not at the core.
Mm-hmm.
The core of it is a woman's value and her worth and who she is in Jesus. That's the core of it. It is about explaining and reteaching a woman that it's not who the man that is abusing her and selling her, that's not who she is.
Right.
It's not the mother that is feeding her drugs so that she will go out and sleep with these 5 men this week so that mom's drug habit can be fed. That's not who that child is. It's who Jesus says that she is. So that is where my heart is.
Mm-hmm.
That is why the calling on my life is what it is. It's to teach that woman and stop this generational nightmare that is going on.
Yep.
That's the calling.
To replace the
Exactly.
given value that she
Exactly.
already had.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's so beautiful. And a lot of what you're doing is what Christ did. You know, he did not place himself around those who already felt their value. You know, you think about the woman caught in adultery, him standing there strong and sending the men away who was degrading her value.
Right.
Remember, leave your sin no more. And just affirming and instead of destroying, building up the woman at the well whose value was in men after man after man after man. And he says, no, you've been going to the wrong well.
You know that she didn't want it to be.
Mm-mm.
She did not want her value to be in the 5 husbands.
Yes, she was living that, and she was at the well by herself,
Right.
which was, at the time, would have been showing us that she had no community.
And so much of what I do after the fact is it's the undoing of a lifetime of being told you are worthless.
Mm-hmm.
So much of it. I have to undo the damage that's done and reteach. So,
which is real discipleship, you know.
yes.
Our 21st century model of evangelism is getting to the building, letting them say a prayer, and then expecting them to hopefully find some community. And we're expecting a complete unwinding of their entire life of sin to happen in a single service. And you see, like Christ teaches, is like, go make disciples, go do what I done. Mm-hmm. And Christ, the disciples he made, he was with them for 3 years.
That's right.
So that's the level of care and attention, but that takes hard work.
That's right. It does.
And I think that leads into why you're having to explain people that you're telling them trafficking is going on in Coleman, trafficking is going on in
yes.
Alabama, and they're like, oh, I have no idea, because it's easier to turn a blind eye to what you don't want to find out.
You're exactly right. The reason I think that, well, part of the reason I think that this ministry has become successful, for lack of a better word, first of all, God has just had his hand on it from the beginning, of course, but it's because we just don't let go of their hand. We just minister even after we take them out of the situation. It's a ministry that we just hold on to them, and we continue to work, we continue to teach, we continue to love, we continue to surround them and pour as much as we can into that woman until she can grab a hold of this concept called I'm a daughter. It is a beautiful thing when you can see the turn. It makes every bit of it worthwhile.
Yeah. Why? And you keep going back to value.
Yes.
Being a daughter, I mean, that's belonging.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that so important in the foundation of what you do? What is it about value that you believe is so transformative?
If you don't learn it, how are we going to stop the next generation from becoming just as broken or more broken? How are you going to do that? We find less and less children being raised in church. We have a school system that is as broken as we've ever seen it before. We have an absence of fathers in the household that are leading their families in church. Who's going to do that? Who's going to do it? So if we can't teach a mother about her value, if we can't teach a woman and show her in the Word who she really is, and show her God's promises over her life, yeah. What are we doing? We can't just keep on and keep on and keep on and expect society to teach her. Society could care less. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
I don't think society is going to do the job right now.
Well, I think that's why Jesus deployed his church into the world as a light on a hill.
Yeah.
And that's what you're doing when you're restoring value. You're just turning on the light. You're just shedding a little bit of a, I guess, light on who they already are. And I think it's so beautiful.
Well, we try very hard to do that, and we it is not about sitting in judgment at all. That is one thing that Standing in the Gap does not do. There is no judgment. It took a long time for a woman to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not one thing that happened. It's a series of things that happened. And you cannot look at her and say, well, she shouldn't have done that. Or she should have made better decisions. Or there's no place for that. There's no place for that. Not in this ministry.
Yeah.
There's not. It took a series of things. It took a variety of people. It took a lack of. It took an absence of. Fill in the blank. And we are there to scoop her up, dust her off, remind her who she is, prop her back up again, and let's love her on her a little bit.
And that's, I mean, I keep going back to the Bible because that's just what I have to do. When Peter and Jesus see each other after the denial, Peter goes up to that dinner with the fish, and it's almost like he expects, oh, this is where I'm getting critiqued. Mm-hmm. And Jesus doesn't talk about what he's done. He talks about what he's going to do. Mm-hmm. You're going to feed my flock. You're going to protect my sheep. And he's just reminding him.
Yes.
Because if we can get them to Christ and find forgiveness of their sin, if God doesn't remember it, we shouldn't either. And then we should equip them on how to look back at their sin and walk from it. You know what I mean? Instead of sitting around casting the stones.
Yes.
So I love that.
And aren't we supposed to, as the church, are we not supposed to love on them? Are we not supposed to? Everybody that walks through the door of that church, our church, we as the church, are we not there to love and care and protect?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, to do something other than is outside of my realm of thinking. Everybody that walks through the door of that church is not perfect.
No, and yet they still deserve the care in which you're giving them. And I think about Jesus addressing the Pharisees, who were people that cared about the tithe and cared about the tradition, and yet Jesus looks at them and says, you collect these things, yet you neglect to do.
Yes.
What does the prophet Micah say? Do justice, love mercy. And
God is a God of justice.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. I mean, the church is God's personal presence here on earth. He dwells with us, and if God is dwelling amongst us, then we ought to act like he wants us to act. And that's not just carry on a worship service. That's creating systems and ministries that go out and do justice and that protect those who can't protect themselves.
Thank you.
And so I appreciate you just taking up the gauntlet and doing that.
Yes.
I think it would be helpful for our listeners for you to take us through some of the stories in which you have tons, and we could be here for hours, but if you could just pick a couple of individuals who you've walked with to kind of help us paint this picture of what trafficking looks like in small town America.
Sure. We had a call about a trafficking incident. I got a call one night just at my house around 9:30 about a girl that was missing, and come to find out, she actually was from Coleman, but had not lived here for a while. And so we sort of divided and conquered a little bit, and we found her, and she was in jail in a different state. Long story short, come to find out, she was being trafficked by a gentleman, and I use that term very loosely.
Yeah.
This man was just the worst. By a gentleman who lived in a different state, but would bring 4 or 5 girls over here to Coleman about once a week, and he would drug them with a special cocktail of his making, and he would bring them here to Coleman once a week, and he would sell them to our local men here out of 2 different motels. And then after their day's work, he would load them back up in his vehicle and take them back to the state, where he would take them back to his mother, oddly enough, and she would take care of them, clean them up, and get them ready for next week's adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And he would bring them back again. And so that went on for a long, long time. And fortunately, we have her rescued now. And it took a long time. It took a very long time to get her safe. It involved multiple agencies with 2 different states involved. But we have her rescued. We have her in a program now that and I must say, it's really sad that we have to have programs for rehab that are strictly for sex trafficked women, and that's all that they do.
Uh-huh.
They are rehabs for women who that's all that they treat, and they help I don't even have the words for it. They teach them how to live in life again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's that kind of woman. Then you have the women who are maybe out in more of the rural parts of the county, who are being trafficked by boyfriends, husbands. Those men may have drug problems, and that's the way that they're getting their drugs. They are forcing their girlfriends, or they may not even be called girlfriends or wives. They're just women who can't get out of a situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, prisoners, really.
Yeah, they are prisoners. Yeah. Then you have, unfortunately, you have some children who are being forced into situations, and I'm talking about young children, being forced into situations by their fathers, uncles. Mom may not even know it. I've had a couple of those situations. Those are terribly, terribly sad. And you see those from time to time. And those are heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I can tell you about a little girl who was abused sexually by her father, and nobody knew about it, but because of me counseling with mom, it just sort of came out in a conversation, which led to finding some holes that had been drilled in a ceiling above the little girl's bed, and some cameras had been placed there by a very bad person, and so the child is safe now.
Gosh,
mom is safe. There are victorious stories of health and happiness and light on the other side. One of the most precious events and stories that I've ever been involved with happens to be a young lady who thought she had found the love of her life. And although she did the wrong thing and she moved in with him, they had intended to marry. But about 2 years into the relationship, he became a horrible, horrible person, and the abuse started. And when the abuse started, I think truly something very evil just entered into this man. By the time we had her rescued, he had tied her up. And she had been tied up for about 6 weeks. She was very emaciated. She probably weighed about 85 pounds, maybe 88, 90 pounds, maybe. And he had beaten her so badly. The one whole side of her face had been crushed in, every bone on one side of her face. And then the other side, all the teeth were gone on this side. And so we got her put into a safe house, and she had not had any form of real human to human contact, talk, interaction in so long. She had just been kept away from any form of just real contact other than him. And so I went and I met up with her, and I started working with her after the rescue. And I picked her up one day from the safe house, and we went to the library, and she was very nervous because being around and outside was very difficult for her, because she had been kept in a very dark place for a very long time. And so being in public was very scary. And so I stood right there with her, and she loved to read, but it had been a very long time since she had been allowed to have a book. And so we checked out some books. And so I said, why don't we go and let's just do a little shopping. Let's do something normal for a change. And I said, how long's it been since you've been shopping? Just do something, just to get something for yourself. And she said, I don't remember the last time. And I said, what do you like to do? And she says, I love to draw, but it's been a long time since I've drawn anything. I used to paint. And I said, oh, good. Let's go get some art supplies. And so we did. We went to one of the local stores, and we got some art supplies, and we just loaded up. We just went and got paper and paints and watercolors, and the whole time she's just weeping. Tears are just streaming down her face. And she said, I don't know if I have anything in me to create anything. And I said, I bet you do. There's so much beauty on the inside. He didn't take that from you. And she said, we'll see. And I said, let's just give it a day or two. I bet you do. And she said, I'll call you if there's something in me. That's okay. And so I said, while we're out, let's go get some makeup. And she says, oh, I haven't had any makeup in a long time. He wouldn't let me wear any makeup. So we went and we got all kinds of makeup. We got some lipstick and some mascara and all those things that make a woman feel pretty. So we did that. And she said, I'm just not pretty anymore. This isn't going to help. And I said, darling, you are gorgeous. You're so pretty. You don't even need this, but let's just get it anyway. And so we did. And we're riding home, and I'm taking her back to the safe house, and she's just silently crying. And she said, I haven't had a day like this in years. I almost forgot what it was like. And I said, we'll do it again. We'll do it again. And in a couple of days, I went back to pick her up again. And she said, Miss Jennifer, I made you something. And I said, you did? And she said, it was still in me. And I said, really? And she said, yeah. And I said, what'd you make me? And she said, I drew you a picture. And I said, what did you draw me? And she said, I drew an angel. And I said, oh my goodness. And she did. She drew an angel, and it had blonde hair. And so I still have it, of course.
Yeah,
and I will have it forever.
Yeah.
And she had to leave because we have to move them around from safe house to safe house. And I don't have any contact with her anymore. But that was one of the most amazing, beautiful experiences I think I've ever had in my life, was getting to know that young lady. Because she felt nothing. She was such a shell of a person. He had taken everything from her. But she found a little bit of a something that she could hold on to. And it came out. It came out a little at a time. And it was the most gorgeous thing to watch part of her blossom again. And it was just one of the most wonderful highlights of the last 6 years of my life.
So beautiful. And what came to mind when you said that is you just uncovered what man tried to bury but couldn't take away. And I'm thankful that God gives value, and no matter the situation, no matter what abuse has happened, it's permanent because He created us.
Yeah.
Not our abusers.
That's right. Boy, he tried to bury her. This man tried his hardest to bury her, but you know what? God wasn't through with her.
How can you bury anyone anymore? Because the one that was buried got up.
That's exactly right. Boy,
and you help her see that. And you know what I think about as you're hearing that is like evil does not discriminate.
No.
You know, and this is why the proclamation of the gospel is so important. The church expanding, people being saved, is because if the opposite is this, you know, all sin leads to death, and all sin is heading to more and more depravity, or worse and worse.
Yes.
And it's so easy to just get people hearing that there's kids in Coleman being trafficked, and then to shut this off.
Yes.
It's harder to press into it and to do something about it, to raise awareness. And
one of the hardest things, I think, is when, the larger churches, helping them to understand that they have members in their church who are going through things like that. Helping those staff members understand that that's going on inside their church is monumental. It's not that they're so far removed from it, but it's hard for them to really believe that it is going on inside of the church body.
Yeah.
And sitting down with the staff of a church and helping them to understand that there are women suffering from being trafficked or severe domestic violence is really difficult for ministers to hear.
if you look at the people who are often ministers or are called, they come from sheltered homes. Sheltered homes produce ignorance because they are not exposed to it. And then you have this question. Okay, I have a lady that I've told about that's been abused. What am I going? Not that it's currently, but that hasn't dealt with in her past. How am I equipped to even handle that?
Right.
And so I think it's a compounding event of education, being sheltered from it. But this is why conversations like this are important, that we are bringing awareness and that you can help. Like, you have a proven ministry of helping and restoring, and there is a way in which we can go about it. And I think the more in which we are equipped and trained, the more courage we have to step out in faith and let God use it. There's really no excuse, but when thinking about what they can do, why is it hard? I genuinely think it's because the church has been out of the inner city for so long. They just don't know how to operate.
I agree. It's also it's a difficult subject matter. It's so difficult to talk about, and I do think that when you have a a problem like domestic violence, and you don't have a strong women's ministry that will address it, there's a problem there too. There's a gap there that needs to be filled when women in the church that are going through that don't have a place to go to run to run into the arms of a group of women that can handle that. It's a hard thing.
Yeah.
They need shelter. They need that light to run towards, of people that can understand and care and help them walk through that.
Yeah.
They need that so badly.
Do you find when working with these women that they do feel alienated? Like,
yes.
There is no one that can understand?
There's so much shame connected with it, especially with women that are in the church. And I'm talking about active women in the church, women that are involved in small groups, women that are involved with, that have their children there every Wednesday night, women that are in the choir, women that are in, that serve on committees. The shame that they live with every day is overwhelming to them, and they're so reluctant. It's hard to come and talk to a man. If you are going through something that is so embarrassing, it's very hard to come and talk to another male about it, as opposed to a group of females that are going to listen and can comprehend what you're saying with a female heart.
Yep.
A woman's heart is just knitted together differently. I think you would agree with that.
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. Well, I mean, I think you also compound that issue with the fact that they've been told that this happened to you because of things you've done.
Yes.
Whether that's you dressed this way, you acted this way,
Yes.
you've pulled that upon yourself, and so that the level of shame and I guess you would call it victim shaming, but being labeled as the problem is so afraid to now come to talk to a pastor or come talk to a male who, when my impression or my interaction with males in the past is them telling me that I've been the reason that's brought this upon myself. And,
right.
And that's why it's important to equip women to do the work of ministry.
And they're so down. They're down enough.
Yeah.
They're so depressed about it enough and so shamed enough, and to go and sit and have to regurgitate an incident in front of another male, it's really, really hard. It's so hard. And it would be different if they could be, if they had a safety net of women around them that could take that and understand what it's like. Not really what it's like, but could understand the feelings, the heart
Yeah.
of that woman.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, we talked. You had mentioned earlier about as you walk into this ministry, and the how dealing with women of domestic violence, of trafficking victims, and the spiritual warfare aspect of it. What has been your experience with? I guess coming to the understanding that this is not men making men decisions. This is spiritual forces of evil
Yes.
influencing men and women to do the most horrible and tragic things to their
Yes.
kids.
That's the only explanation for it. I had an incident that happened. We were actually, my husband and I were actually on just a little trip. We had gone down to Florida just for a little trip, and we were sitting outside, and I noticed that there was a woman by herself with four very large men, and they had been serving her a lot of alcohol while we were there.
Yeah.
And it was obvious that it wasn't just alcohol that they were serving her. She was clearly drugged.
Yeah.
And as we were sitting there outside, just it was a warm day, beautiful. We were gonna eat, and it became very obvious that the goal was to take this woman, and they did. They all got up at once, and two of the men started walking with this woman towards a van in the parking lot. And so I stood up and confronted them by myself. And, all those things that you're not supposed to do, but I did. And I confronted them, and I said, I know exactly what you're doing, and you need to bring her back to me. And of course, there were a lot of words said that I can't repeat. And I said, no, you will bring her back to me right now. And I am praying the entire time that I'm talking with them. And for some odd reason, I know why, but for some odd reason, they did. They brought her back, and they were standing in front of me very close. They were, two people taller than me because I'm a midget, but they were standing in front of me. And all of a sudden, Caleb, they started looking behind me just in utter amazement. They were just staring behind me, just like this, just looking around me. And I knew what they saw. And they were terrified, absolutely terrified. And they handed her over to me. And the entire time I'm praying, and they're looking behind me. And they give the woman to me, and I put her behind me, and they're still looking behind me, and I'm praying, and I said, Lord, I need a sheriff car to show up, like right now.
Yeah.
Like right now. And at that very moment, two sheriff cars come around the corner of the restaurant in SUVs. Two sheriff SUVs come around the corner and park right where I'm standing.
Jeez.
And they get out and they say, do you need some help? And I said, yes, I do, actually. And there were no questions asked. One of them took the woman and made sure she was okay, and took her back to her hotel and made sure that they got her moved. And the other one arrested all four of the men for drugging her and trying to take her and kidnap her. She was there for a convention. And they had targeted her, and immediately targeted her, started drugging her, and they were going to take her. And
But you stood in the gap.
I stood in the gap.
Yeah.
I did. But I know exactly what they saw behind me. And I will forever know what they saw behind me. And it was an army of angels behind me. And I know it. And
That's beautiful.
they saw it. And it to this day, that is the most amazing supernatural event probably that's happened.
That's so
to me.
beautiful. You know, it's interesting when you put yourself in a position where God has to come through for it to succeed.
Yeah.
I think that is why that act of faith
Mm-hmm.
engages the spiritual realm in ways nothing else will.
Right.
And many people don't experience the things you experience
Mm-hmm.
because they live quiet lives, doing nothing that requires faith or courage.
Yeah.
But you stood up and you didn't have the resources to beat them physically.
Mm-hmm.
But as you're standing there praying, God
Yes.
is sending.
Yes.
And what a beautiful
But I felt
example.
it. Oh, I wish I had the vocabulary to explain it, because there was absolutely no fear involved whatsoever on my part, and the moment that they started looking behind me, there was utter peace in the whole situation.
Yeah.
And you could just see the fear on their faces, and all color drained from them. It was the most unbelievable thing to watch. And the moment that those two sheriff SUVs rolled around that building, to this day, I will never ever forget it. I will never forget it. It was amazing.
That's so beautiful. I heard a quote that said, God is way more willing for us to come to him than we ever will be to come to him. And I'm thankful that you had the faith to ask bold, specific prayers, because he's already outstretched arms waiting to send, if we would just have the courage to put ourselves in situations that we need him. And man, thank you for sharing that story. I mean, that's
absolutely.
just like that should motivate us, though.
Yeah.
Not to put ourselves in dangerous situations all the time, no, but to be willing to confront danger, knowing that there is a God that wants to help that woman more than you do.
The amount of times that I am asked, "Are you not afraid? Aren't you scared?" No, I'm not. I'm not afraid. I'm not scared. I have a God who is so big, and because of that, and because of big promises, I have a Bible full of big promises that a big God made. And because of that, I have big faith. I mean, it just gives you all sorts of big faith.
Yeah.
And so I don't have big fear. I just don't. And I know that he's not going to call me to something and then
Abandon
me. There's no way. There's no way that my God's going to do that.
Yeah.
I know that.
And that equips you to have courage.
You better
and
believe
discipline and endurance.
You better believe it. Because it's not a clock in and clock out job. I don't clock in at 8 o'clock in the morning and it's all over with at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not. And it's not like I wake up every day and I know what my day is going to hold. I don't. I have no idea. So you go out on big faith and you just say, okay, whatever it is, okay.
I'll be faithful.
I will be faithful. And I know that whatever that mountain is that you've got for me, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. We're going to climb that sucker together.
I love it. So beautiful. You know, I think about your story, and you didn't come up in an abusive household, so you weren't related to the issue.
Mm-mm.
You weren't brought up in law enforcement, so you weren't educated on the issue.
No.
You do not work for a 2,000 employee organization. I think it's an organization of a handful.
Yeah.
And yet all those things are reasons why people don't get involved. And yet you have been an example that you don't have to have a personal story. You don't have to have a crazy testimony. You don't have to have tons of resources. If you could just help one person, just what can I do today? God can then use you in massive ways. I would imagine that when you started this, you didn't expect it to get to the where you are, helping 4 women in the last week.
Right.
4 women
Right.
that represent generations yet unborn.
Yeah.
Because you had, I'm going to be pulled into this not because it's my story, not because it's my education, but because my God has called me.
Right.
And if more people would accept that, and you said you don't clock out. That's what happens when ministry and work overlap.
Right.
And it's not just for the trafficking; it's for the mechanic, it's for the teacher, it's for the banker. It's you as a image bearer of God, as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus, and as we work as if we are working unto the Lord. Our employment is our ministry, and when we get that intentional, all of the sudden, the brokenness in which you spoke about comes to light, and then our employment becomes our ministry, and that, I think when that thing comes together, the kingdom of God becomes very dangerous.
Yes.
As we get ready to wrap up, what because again, this is happening, whether you want to believe it or not, whether you want to ignore it and keep going on about your life. Not all of you are called to serve in the way Jennifer does, but you are called to be people that minister justice and at least serve those that you see. And to better equip those people to do that, what are some things that as they're going out and they're looking around, they're shopping at Walmart, they're in the neighborhood, what are some things they can look at to identify potential victims of trafficking, if you don't mind? Just shedding a little light on that.
That's a great question. When you see a woman who, let's go with a younger situation. If you see an older teenager-ish, younger 20-ish woman, and she's with a gentleman that just doesn't fit who she might be with, who just it just doesn't look right. He might be twice her age. He might be he's standing a little too close. She's very closed in on herself. Let's say her posture is just not quite right. Her shoulders are a little bit hunched. She's a little bit closed in on herself. If she's not making eye contact with you, let's say you're in the doctor's office, let's say you're in the emergency room, if he is answering all the questions that they're trying to ask her when she's being registered in the emergency room, if he's not allowing her to speak, huge red flag. We talk to emergency room personnel a lot. A lot of times they will not allow a girl to, like, let's say a nurse wants to go and take some x-rays of a woman, and
they ain't gonna let them leave their side.
No, they're not gonna say no, they're not gonna let her go by herself. I'll go with. She's not gonna be able to answer any of the questions that the nurse asks. He's gonna answer all of those. Let's say that she's not properly dressed. Let's say it's like it is right now. It's 5 degrees outside right now.
I'm thankful we're inside.
She doesn't have the appropriate clothing on. There are marks on her body that just don't look right. It's not your normal, oh, I accidentally fell down. It's not right. She's not really clean, but he is. Those are huge red flags.
Yeah. And the proper steps when identifying these people, call local law enforcement, even if you're not sure, just to let them know. I mean, would you say hesitate on calling or make that call pretty quickly?
I would, first of all, I would try to talk to her in a subtle way. You know, if you can just say, huh, everything okay? If she looks away,
Somebody, okay.
something's not right. Something's not right.
But you're leading an organization that is actively assaulting the forces of darkness consistently.
Yes.
And you started that. And you didn't start that with a backing of 1 million people.
Mm-mm.
How could you encourage those to look at their talents, look at their abilities, and do that as well?
Yeah. First of all, you have to be obedient. Number one.
Yeah.
If you believe that we are given gifts and talents, and if you believe that, and if you are truly a believer, you must be obedient to that.
Okay.
If God's going to give you gifts and talents, recognize them, and then be willing to use them.
That's right.
Just sit in a posture of obedience and see what it is that He has for you. It's really exciting. I mean, it's fun. It's exciting. It is so wonderful to have that sort of relationship with the Lord. My goodness. I spent years in service in a different way.
Yep.
I was singing all over the world before I did this. And that was my gift. God gave me that gift. And I did that for a long, long time, not knowing that I had this waiting on me for the second half of my life.
Yeah.
And so when He gave me this, I thought, oh my goodness, I wish I had known. But falling into this and Him leading me into this and me saying yes has been the most joyful, wonderful, close experience with the Lord. I have never had this in my life. If you will just say yes and let God lead you and it not be about you, that's the joy. That's the fruit.
Yeah.
Is when it's not about you. That I get so much blessing from the service and from the saying yes and from my relationship with Him. What He feeds me from it. It's the love I get from Him. What He gives me in His Word. When He gives me those aha moments.
Yeah.
The faith that He has given me is tenfold what any other sort of joy that I might get in my life. It is amazing. The people that He has put in my life, these women that come and He just drops them in my lap. I love these women. I love these women with my whole heart. I do. I can't believe that I get to be the one. I cannot believe it, that I get to be the one that's allowed to help them.
That's right.
I just can't believe it.
Well, I'm thankful you are the one.
I'm
thankful that that you've said yes, and I hope that people that are listening can hear that this ministry is hard. You know,
it is hard.
It's brutal, and it hits you in the mouth a lot. But you're speaking about it with joy, and that only comes from doing something that requires God to walk alongside you. And so my hope is that this podcast has not only educated, but it's encouraged people. If God's put something on your heart, walk in it and let Him walk with you.
Amen. That's the truth.
That is the truth.
That is the truth. Just say yes. Don't continue to shut the door because you never know. You never know what saying yes is going to bring you. You never know. And you never know the people that He's got in store for you
to impact. And thank you for standing in the gap. Thank you for being the one that says, that's not going to another daughter. It's not going to another creation of Christ. And I think there will be generations 100 years from now that will tell stories about Jennifer who chose to do something that she didn't have to. So
I hope they're telling stories about God, and I hope they're telling stories about how God rescued me and rescued those women.
That's right. But God, we tell stories about Moses, but really who did it? God. But God chooses to partner with you. So thank you for partnering with him.
Oh,
And thank you for what you
thank
do.
you.
And for anyone that's listened to the podcast that's watched it, we're gonna put your organization link in the bio. And if you want to become part of her team, partnering with her to help rescue these women, that would be much appreciated, because what she's doing is not um, sitting in an office room writing letters and sending them. She's out in the work, working with agencies, rescuing women, and this work really matters. And so, Jennifer, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the Able to Overcome podcast, and thank
It's
you
been
for
fun.
inspiring me to work a little harder on what I do.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for saying that.
Yeah, thank you.